I'm Simone, a chef and spice buyer, and I'm in love with spices. This week we're in Kerala, India, exploring pepper, the king of spices. For me, spices are endlessly fascinating. It's not just about millions of things you could possibly do with them on a culinary level, but the history, the myth, the legends, the lore, how they've been used medicinally, and what an important part that they played in people's lives throughout the millennia is just amazing to me. Kerala, India is the birthplace of pepper. The Latin name for pepper is Piper nigrum, which is black pepper as well as white pepper and green peppercorns. These are peppercorns, and these men are harvesting the berries. They look like small grape clusters, which are referred to as drupes. The pepper you know from your table is the dried and processed version of these berries. Virtually every peppercorn in the world is still picked by hand, if you can believe that. So harvesting is a manual process. Each pepper picker has a single bamboo or metal pole that's leaned against a support tree. He goes up and down, working the vine with a woven sack. So pepper grows on a vine about 13 to 15 feet up a supporting tree, or what's technically known as a life standard. The vines have a lifespan of about 15 to 20 years, so a good supporting tree is critical for pepper vines. No other spice has had such a profound effect on the history of international commerce and voyages of discovery and influence on so many cultures and cuisines as pepper. The Romans paid taxes with it, and by the Middle Ages, pepper had become so coveted it was considered as valuable as currency. But perhaps here's the trick of history. No one in Europe knew what the pepper plant looked like. They didn't even know where it grew. Arab and Yemenite traders would lie about the sources of pepper in order to protect their monopoly on such a coveted commodity.
There was a lot of obfuscation in where pepper actually came from, and of course at that time there was the purity of black pepper only grew on the Malabar coast. They used to do all that, but to protect their sources, they would pretend that black pepper came from fire-spewing dragons.
So by the end of the 15th century, the demand for pepper was so great, European traders were determined to directly source it. So it was pepper more than any other trade item that would launch the Age of Discovery.
Columbus actually spoke to his fund managers, and they said, just go and get us pepper. But there were several problems. First of all, nobody knew where exactly pepper grew. And nobody knew what pepper looked like on the vine, or whether there was a vine or whether there was any other kind of plant.
It was a search for a westward sea route to the spices of Asia that brought Columbus, quite accidentally, to the Americas.
He came to the West Indies, and there he saw something. He plucked a few chilies and took them back with him. That was the moment that the world changed. Although Christopher Columbus was very far from discovering pepper, he discovered something that was to become a whirlwind around the world. And nobody could have foreseen that at that time.
In the centuries to come, and in an ironic twist of history, the same red chilies that Columbus mistook for Caroline pepper would migrate to South Asia and come to dominate Indian cuisine. Today, it is the red chili and not black pepper that defines Indian cuisine. The same red chilies Columbus mistook for black pepper back in the 15th century.
As far as India is concerned, I like to think that red chilies is the mistress, black pepper is the wife, and the husband, which is Indian cuisine, just as soon as he saw red chili, he just made off with her, and he's never looked back at black pepper, his wife. And that has changed Indian cuisine completely.
From India, pepper cultivation was introduced by Indian colonists to Indonesia, then on to other countries around the world, with Vietnam being the largest producer today. Here at the Simone Organic Farm, seedlings are grown and tested for variations of color, aroma, and flavor, and to find out which plants will have the most robust growth. To learn more, I spoke with Jeswin Matthew, the Southern Regional Project Manager here at Simone Organics.
Farmers are choosing more on local strains which has got disease resistant, pest resistant.
So what exactly is a model
Model
farm?
farm is a farm which has to be a model for the other farms in terms of varieties. We got local accessions, local variants.
What is the approximate yield on a mature vine?
In the 6th or 7th year, I think in a very healthy gardens, you will get around 1 kg of dried peppercorns
Per vine.
per vine.
So what is the best climate for pepper to grow in?
Pepper needs an average humid climate, but altitude is very important. It's a tropical only, but in the high ranges.
After the pepper is harvested, it moves into a threshing machine like the one we see here. The thresher removes the peppercorns from the stem before they are dried. This is a traditional drying area meant for the local market. It's the traditional woven mats in the open air, and you can see this is day one, the first mat here. We still have some red and green that's showing, but you're also seeing that there's a lot of black that's already happening just within a few hours from being harvested from the vines. The next mat is a 2-day dry, and then the mat further on is 3 days. Again, this is just for the local market, but it's a really colorful and beautiful way to see how the local product is processed, right after the harvest. After visiting several farms and seeing pepper harvesting, threshing, and drying, I was invited to lunch with one of the farmers' families. Having a meal with a spice farmer and his family is one of my favorite things about sourcing spices. The genuine warmth of the people and the sharing of a meal create such strong bonds that are never forgotten. In this simple act, you become family. The medicinal properties of pepper have been known since antiquity. The traditional Indian practice of Ayurveda has been exported around the world. To understand more, especially at its origin of India, I met with Dr. Paulos, a local Ayurvedic doctor. What would you say the biggest benefit of Ayurvedic medicine is over Western medicine?
It can be used safely and is available
From Mother Nature?
neighborhood.
So, doctor, how is black pepper used in Ayurvedic medicine?
It is useful in pulmonary diseases.
Pulmonary? Okay.
Yes, digestive problems. In some cases, we use it in skin diseases. Black pepper is act as a catalyst.
So, black pepper is used in conjunction with other medicines to amplify their medicinal properties and kind of act as a catalyst to make them work better in the body.
We use black pepper wine decoction for external use also.
So you call it a wine?
This wine is
Not
used
wine,
to make,
the vine.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Pepper wines.
My mind is always on wine, whether it's from pepper or any other botanical. It was time to leave behind the verdant upper hills of Idukki and travel back to the bustling and charming capital city of Cochin, the capital of Kerala, to understand how pepper is processed and goes to market. In Cochin, I met with Rajiv Palicha of NetSpice, a wholesale spice exporter, to learn more about how pepper is processed. Rajiv took us through both traditional and modern processing.
The primary objective of pepper process is per se to remove the extraneous matters.
At the traditional facility, like what happens once the pepper gets there, what each step that the pepper goes through, and then how it leaves that facility?
They use very traditional kind of machines and they use a lot of gravity and material movement is done by people.
So a lot more manual
Handling.
and more primitive equipment is used
Exactly.
for it. And so like farm material that we would want to remove would be like stem material, leaf material, stones, anything from like the bags that the pepper is packed in.
Yes, or the twigs inside the pepper which come in after harvest. Though the productivity is quite low on that processes.
Then it's bagged and sent out to the domestic market.
Yes.
And so the difference here in the modern facility where you're more geared to providing product for the export market, what are the main differences between that type of processing and the traditional?
Yeah, here we rely a lot on scientific method of processing. Pneumatic conveyors fetch the pepper. Pneumatic conveyor is like a suction it sucks out the raw material and places into the next stage of pepper processing. So there is hardly any manual intervention in that, where it avoids contact with the workers. And once you feed in, as you have seen it, the pneumatic conveyor takes it to a first stage of grader. Now grading is the separation of the different grades in a bulk material.
And you mean by size?
By size,
By size.
by quality, for different applications. So basically the grader does is to separate all the different grades.
So this one is pneumatically or by air,
Yes.
moving the peppercorns from one piece of equipment to another so that they don't have as much human contact.
Interaction.
I'm not sure, a lot of people realize in the United States that the FDA has implemented some new food safety rules in the last few years that are making a huge impact on the importers that supply us food from around the world. And that basically the food producers in other countries are being held to the same food safety standards as the producers in the United States. And that's something a little bit new in some areas of the world, but
Yes.
that they should feel good that it's the same as being produced in the States as it is here
Yes.
in India, for example. It's
Yes.
held to the same food safety standards.
Yes. No, India has been a leader in processing technology.
India is one of the largest producers of spices, but also the largest consumer of
Yes.
spices. So
Yes.
about how much of their crop are they consuming?
So roughly about 80% of the crop for each of the spice, India mostly consumes that.
That's it here.
So about 20% is exportable surplus.
Wow.
So India per se is a big market.
There's a lot of confusion about what the differences are between black, white, green, and pink peppercorns. Black pepper is peppercorns that are picked when they're still green, and once they are picked, they start to go an enzymatic reaction, which is what causes them to shrivel and turn black. So green pepper is picked at the same time as black pepper. They need to be either freeze-dried right away or boiled for about 15 minutes to kill that enzyme. And the flavor is, opposed to black, is a lot fresher, it's grassier, it's got like a pungent hotness to it. White pepper is picked at a later stage, so they're more towards ripe. To make white pepper, what you need to do is remove the fruit or the pericarp. White pepper is actually hotter than black pepper because that fruit that is removed is actually not pungent. It doesn't have the piperin, which is the chemical component that makes pepper spicy. Pink peppercorns actually are not botanically related to black, white, or green pepper at all. As pepper grows on a vine, pink peppercorns actually grow on a small tree or bush. So we're going to do pork dumplings, one with crushed black pepper, one with crushed white, and one with crushed green. We're going to need 1 pound of fatty ground pork and 1 package of wonton skins. So to the pork, what I'm going to add is 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. I'll mince some Chinese chives, which add a nice garlic flavor. We'll add 3 tablespoons. I'm going to mince some fresh ginger, and I'm going to put 3/4 of a teaspoon. And I'm also adding 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing rice wine or Marine rice wine, plus 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Mix all of this up, and then I'll divide it into 3 bowls. Once I've divided the pork mixture into 3 bowls, I'm going to coarsely grind in a mortar black peppercorns, white peppercorns, and green peppercorns separately. Each teaspoon of ground black, white, and green peppercorns will go into their according bowl. And then I'll start to stuff the skins. After peeling off each wonton skin, what I do is I moisten the edges lightly with just tap water, and then I put about 2 teaspoons to a tablespoon of the filling into each one, pressing the edges to adhere. What I like to do is to make each peppercorn type of dumpling into a different shape, as you can see here, and that way they're easier to identify once you've steamed them. Once I've made all of my dumplings, I put them into a steamer with boiling water, and they steam for about 15 to 20 minutes. And I serve them with a really simple dipping sauce of really nice soy sauce and some yuzu juice. So with the fatty ground pork, what you also get is that some spices are more soluble in oil than in water, and the fat from the pork really tends to release more aroma and flavor from the spices. And being able to put them on such a simple canvas next to each other, you're really able to taste the differences between the varieties of pepper. Over the last week, we've traveled around Kerala, seeing pepper cultivation and meeting some wonderful people. Working with spices is indeed a journey. There's an incredible story behind the black pepper you see on every table around the world, something to think about at your next meal. I'm Simone Cormier. Until next time.